Hey there, friends. This is Kevin from happycoding.io, and today I want to talk about a really cool tool called Jekyll. So before we get into that, I want to say maybe just a couple things. This video is going to start off assuming that you have done the previous video, so that's like GitHub pages. So if you haven't done this one yet, then go back and do this one first and then come back to this video. I'll post a link in the description and stuff. But GitHub Pages is a product, I guess, from GitHub that lets you host like HTML files and stuff to build a website that's deployed to a live URL. So walk through this tutorial, and at the end you'll have a GitHub Pages site that looks kind of like this, or if you already have a GitHub Pages site, that's cool too. But I'm assuming that you already have sort of that stuff set up. The other thing I wanted to mention is, in addition to this video, this tutorial is also in written form. So if you want to check that out, come to happycoding.io, and it's under the HTML section and then Jekyll. So you can go, let me find it. We find it on my own website here, and then scroll down and it's here. I'll also just post a link in the description. So all of that being said, maybe let's just dive in. So like I said, I'm starting from the GitHub Pages tutorial. So let me maybe just start by going to GitHub. And I have already set up a repo from when I did the previous video, and it contains a single, well, a README file, but we don't really care about that right now, and a single index.html file. So if I go to kevinworkman.github.io, I see my beautiful index.html file. And again, if you already have a GitHub Pages site, that's cool. You can start from there, or if you don't, then go back to the old video and create your repo and stuff. But this is what I'm starting with. And my goal here today, in the next, I don't know, I never know how long these videos are going to be. So let's say 30 minutes to an hour. We'll see if I hold myself accountable to that. I want to use Jekyll to sort of flesh this out a bit more. So right now it's just a single file, and I want to use Jekyll to take it to sort of the next level. So how do I want to do that? So I already have done a couple of things just because I've used Jekyll in the past. Let's see if this works. Yeah, it does. So if I Google Jekyll, or use your favorite search engine, whatever, DuckDuckGo or Bing, whatever the kids are using these days, do a search for Jekyll and find jekylrb.com, or go there directly. And this is the tool that we will be using, or I will be using. So if you haven't used Jekyll before, then come here and find the download section, which is probably somewhere. How to download. Maybe in here? Yeah, okay. So go to this installation, and depending on your operating system, follow one of these. I'm on Windows, so I would follow this, and I would walk through these steps. So I've already done this. I did this a long time ago when I first started using Jekyll, so I won't step through it now. Plus, it'll be kind of boring just watching me install stuff anyway. So I will say that if you're just new to Jekyll, then make sure you do this. And the way you can verify that you've installed it correctly is if you open up a command line and you type Jekyll-version. And that command will basically ask Jekyll what version is currently installed. And I don't know why this is taking so long, but I really had to think about that. But here we go. It's I currently have Jekyll 4.1.1, but whatever version you have is probably fine. The important thing is that it saw this Jekyll command. That's how you can kind of confirm. All right, so that's all the setup stuff. And if you have questions about any of that, or if you're stuck on something, don't be afraid to ask a question or reach out on the Happy Coding forum and all that good stuff. Anyway, it's my shameless self-promotion for the day. Let's see. So the next thing I want to do is I want to go to my repo locally. So I have my repo checked out in my GitHub directory, and it's kevinworkman.github.io over here. And here's the local copy of my index.html file. And in the previous video, or the previous tutorial, you saw that I can push changes to this file to GitHub, and that will deploy my changes to github.io or to my GitHub Pages site here, and that's all good. So I could keep doing that, but I want to use Jekyll. So what I want to do now is I'm going to open up a command line to this directory. So whether you open it up the way I just did or if you cd into it, it's fine. Open up a command line to the directory that contains your GitHub Pages site, and run this command, run Jekyll serve. This is like the most commonly used command with Jekyll, at least with the way I use it. So Jekyll serve, hit enter, run that command, and it'll think for a second, and when you see server running, that means that it's done. And in the previous tutorial, you might remember that we just kind of double clicked on this, or we opened it up in Chrome. So I could open it directly in Chrome. You get this like file URL. Oh, that's annoying. Chrome, your UI. There you go. You see this file URL, and that'll work for some sites, but it won't work for things like once you get into more complex JavaScript and things like that. So you want to actually run a server, which is actually what Jekyll does for you. So now I have my server running, and I can go to localhost, which is my own computer, :4000, which just happens to be the port that Jekyll uses. And so I've gone to this URL, which is a URL that points to my local server that's running from the command I just ran, and you see my index.html file. So that means that Jekyll is doing its thing, and it's hosting our server and serving our files. So I can do something like open up this in an editor, and I can do something like hello Jekyll, and I'll save it, and the server will automatically detect that change. I think it should anyway. Let's see, did that do it? Yeah, so there it goes, and it detected the change and sort of refreshed the server. So if I go here, I see my change. So that's the sort of very first kind of flow that you will use when you're using Jekyll. You run your server, and then you make changes to your files, and you hit localhost 4000 to see your changes in your on your local machine. And that's really handy for things like as you write your code, or as you write your HTML or your content, you can test it locally before you deploy it to the sort of live site so that other people can see it. All right, so what I want to do next is maybe just flesh out my content just a little bit. So I never remember how to write HTML from scratch, so this isn't actually me like shamelessly self-promoting, but maybe it is. But I legitimately always go here when I need to remember how to do something. So I'm going to steal some of my own code. Let's see. Yeah, let me maybe steal some of this stuff. I want to add some CSS maybe. And let's see. So Jekyll was designed with like blogs in mind. You don't necessarily have to be writing a blog, but I'm going to kind of pretend I am here. So my blog. Welcome to my blog. And then I might add some styles in a second, and we'll see. What do I want to do? Yeah. I think that's probably fine. And yeah, whatever. Let's just see what this looks like. It won't look too different. Yeah, okay. So what I want to maybe start is maybe building out some other pages. So what I might do is go to my my directory, and maybe I'll just copy this. Maybe I'll make like a contact page, and I'll edit that to say something like, contact me. And I'll say, you can email me at kevin@happycoding.io. Something like that. And let's see, maybe I'll change the title of this page, contact me. And yeah, so I've got two pages now, index and contact. Maybe I'll link to them from each other. So maybe I'll create like a nav bar, something like this. I never remember what it is. I think it's nav. And I'll just do like links, just straight up A tags in here. A href equals, and here I want to use like index.html for home, and maybe same kind of thing for contact. All right, and I want that in both files, so I have my nav in index and my nav in contact. Cool. And let's check to see that Jekyll's doing its thing. Seems to be doing its thing. Cool. Yeah, there you go. So I've got my beautiful nav. You know, if you want to learn more about how to make this look prettier, you can check out the CSS tutorial. But for my purposes, I just want to demonstrate kind of the concepts and not spend 45 minutes making this look perfect. So this is good enough for what I needed to do. So I can go to home, I can go to contact, yeah, good enough, and maybe I'll add some CSS. I don't like how this turns purple. That's like an artifact of like ancient HTML styling, which no one ever uses anymore. So maybe I'll say like styles.css. Yeah. And what will I do? I'll do like A. And can I do like color? What's the default? I think it's like 0000 EE, something like this. I don't know if I need like a visited thing or anything. We'll see. Yeah, that worked, I think. So now I can go home, contact, and it stays blue. Cool. And you can imagine, you know, other pages in here, you know, maybe an about page or, you know, whatever your little heart desires. But the idea is the same. Once you have two, you can add more. But I have these two files, and you might notice that the content is almost the same between them. Like the only real difference is down here in the content, kind of in the body, like after the nav. Like all of these lines are mostly the same. The title's a little different, but really the only thing that changes between them is these, which gets to be kind of annoying. So if I wanted to add a third file, let's say, I don't know, about me, I would do kind of the same thing. I would probably copy an existing file, and then I would change the things that need to change. And that'll work, but you know, you're copying a lot of the same content over and over again. And it also gets more annoying to maintain, because now if I add a third file, I have to go back to the previous two files and make sure I change the nav, make sure I change anything else that has changed across all pages and all that stuff. And it gets kind of just annoying to maintain. So the first thing I want to talk about is a tool that Jekyll gives you. So far, everything we've done, you don't really need Jekyll to do. It's like a server and stuff, and that's cool, but you could do all of this with just straight file URLs, opening the files directly. But now that we are using Jekyll, we can use the tools that come with Jekyll. And one of those tools is called a layout. And so to use a layout, let's see. First, I want to create a folder called layouts, I think, with an underscore at the beginning. So underscore layouts. And then I want to start by maybe just copying this index.html file into it. And then I'm going to rename it to, it doesn't really matter what you call it. You can call it anything you want. I'm going to call it default, just default.html. I could call it something like main or layout or whatever, but I'm just going to call it default. So I've got this default.html layout, and right now it's just a copy of the actual homepage. And what I want to do is where the differences are. So right here specifically where the content of the page is, I want to kind of delete that. And so now I have this kind of blank HTML file that only contains the shared content that will be on every page. And where I want to substitute in the custom content for each individual page, I'm going to do this. I'm going to, in curly braces, so in 2 curly braces, open and close, I'm going to write the word content. So I'll get more into this in a second, but this is called Liquid. It's a templating language that Jekyll uses that lets you play with HTML content in a way that lets you do some interesting things. So let me switch over to one of the other files. Let me switch over to index.html. So back to our home page. So compare like this homepage index.html to the layout that we just created, that default.html layout, and you'll see it's almost the same except for the content. And so what I want to do is, I want to do 2 things. First of all, I want to delete all of the content except for what I want to like insert into the layout. So the sort of body of this file. And then I want to add what is called front matter. And front matter is always at the top of the file. I guess that's maybe why it's called front. And it's between 3 dashes. So two sets. So 3 dashes at the top, 3 dashes at the bottom. And then in here you can put, a bunch of different kinds of things, but the thing we are going to specify is the layout. And I called my layout default. So I'm going to say layout : default. I don't need the HTML part, just say default. So this file is now sort of a Jekyll file, and it has front matter that says take whatever's in this file and insert it as the content into the default layout. So you take this content from index.html and you insert it into default.html as content here. So if I double check, Jekyll's doing its thing, cool. If I go back to my site and I do a refresh, actually nothing should change, because the end result is still the same web page, the same HTML, but now my index.html, if I look at it, it is much simpler. It's only the actual content, not the nav bar, not the head, not the anything else. So let's do the same thing for contact.html. So right now contact is this kind of this full HTML file, but again all of this is shared. So I'll add front matter and I'll delete anything that's not the sort of content of this page. All right, so layout : default, save that, double check, Jekyll's doing its thing, cool, refresh, and then I'm going to go over here to contact, and it all still works, it all still fits together. And the payoff of this is, now let's say I want to change, I want to change every page. Right now I only have 2, but you can imagine that over time you'll have, dozens or even hundreds of pages. And I want to add maybe a footer. I'll add a footer. So I could add that to every page manually, and that's kind of what we would have to do without Jekyll. But since I have Jekyll, what I can do is I can edit the layout itself. So I actually don't remember the tag. Is it just footer? Let's see. Yeah, it's just footer. Okay. So I can maybe go down here. Maybe I'll put like a HR. I think this might be my favorite HTML tag. And maybe I'll add a footer that just says, thanks for visiting my blog. You can put whatever you want down here, and it's kind of just an example, but the idea is I'm modifying my layout so that I can introduce a change that is shown in every page, or in my case, both pages. So if I refresh, you see that I now have this header and it's on both pages, or all pages. So you can imagine that this becomes pretty handy as your site grows and you want to make changes to the sort of shell of your site, so like the nav or the the stuff surrounding your content. It becomes really helpful. Let's see. So next, one thing I want to talk about, let's see. So now if I go to home and I go to contact, you might notice like the title, which shows up here. That's actually the same on both. So home, contact, it still says my GitHub Pages site. And that's because of this layout. It specifies the title here. And I want to customize that a little bit. I want to customize the title in each file. And, I could go back to, maybe I specify the top part of this in my individual HTML files, but that's going to get pretty gross and not really maintainable, not really like thinking in Jekyll. So what I can do is I can specify another property or another variable up here in the front matter of each individual page, and I can say like title, and then give it a title. Maybe I'll call this one home, and I'll call this one like contact me, something like this. So now that I have this title variable specified, what I can do is go back to my layout, and here where the title is specified, I can use something very similar to this, which is the liquid syntax for Jekyll. So 2 open braces, 2 closing braces, and I can do page.title here, I think. So this is telling Jekyll to take the title from the individual page, which is the pages like contact.html and index.html, take it from the front matter and insert it into the HTML of the layout to output the end result. So now if I refresh, I should see my title change up here. So now my title says contact me, and if I go back here, my title says home. So that's perfect. And you can specify anything you want up in here, this front matter. So you could do, I don't know, something like define an image or a thumbnail or something like that. We might get into that a little later, depending on time. But the idea is you can specify variables here in the individual pages that you use in the layout, which generates the output HTML. Okay. So let's see. Maybe the next thing I'll talk about is posts. Let me think. Maybe I should have planned this. I always say that, but whatever. Yeah, let's talk about posts next. So like I said, Jekyll was originally designed with blogs in mind. It probably even says that like right on their page. Yeah, it's like blog aware, which means that it's designed with the use case of blogging in mind, where you have a set of posts that you continually add to. So maybe you try to blog every day or every week, or whenever the mood strikes you. I think my last one was back in December, so maybe it's every 4 months. Who knows? But you're not tied to blogs. I'm using a blog example here just because it's kind of the easiest example that I can think of, but you can use posts for anything. So maybe you're posting recipes, or I don't know, like your hike of the day, or whatever. But with that in mind, I'm going to kind of talk about posts next. So to use the posts feature, you can imagine, okay, so what I want to do next is like add a couple of posts, and I could do that similar to what I was doing before, where I copy one of these files and just add straight like HTML files, and that'll work, but it doesn't unlock a couple features that I want to talk about later, and it'll just make my page kind of messy because I'll just have a bunch of HTML files hanging out in the middle of nowhere. So what I want to do is create a new folder called posts. So _ posts. You might notice that Jekyll enjoys its directories with like an underscore, and layouts is no exception. So what I want to do is, maybe I actually will steal this index file just to start with something. So I'm going to go to posts, and I'm going to create an HTML file in here with a very specific naming convention. So it's based on the date, so it's year, so 4-digit year, 2-digit month, and 2-digit date. So I'm just going to choose like March 1st, even though it's not March 1st, whatever. And actually, sorry, I'm distracted because my neighbors are walking by my window. You need the year, the month, the date, and the title. So let me think of, I've got some images that I prepared. So I'm going to call this one beach. So let's say I'm making a blog post about going to the beach today. I'm going to open this up in my editor, and I'm going to say title, maybe beach. And I'm going to spell things right. And let's see, maybe what I'll do is, maybe I'll have an image as well. So let's see, I prepared these somewhere. Where did I put them? Put them on my desktop, I think. So I've got some images ready, and let me maybe create like an images, and let me just copy this straight up into here. So I've got an images directory in the top of my directory structure. Good enough. And I'll maybe use one of my images. So image source equals images, the directory that I just created, and there's one called beach. I don't remember if it's a PNG or JPEG. What is it? JPEG. I think that's right. So I've got my title, I've got my little, you can imagine that this is a full blog entry with like many paragraphs if you want, or it can be short and sweet, whatever. But that's in there now. Okay, let's see, is Jekyll doing its thing? Looks like it is. Okay. And so I'm going to go back here. I'm going to go back to my home page, and I haven't created any links to my blog, so I'm going to just go there directly. The way Jekyll by default treats the post is it puts it in this kind of directory structure. So it's year, month, day, and then title. I think that's what I called it. I don't know why it's taking so long. Oh, there you go. Okay, so yeah, okay, cool. So a couple things that happened. One, this image is way too big. And two, you can see this kind of error in Jekyll, and it's saying that, hey, I couldn't find styles.css. What's up with that? And that's because of this directory structure. So this beach.html is inside of these like directories that Jekyll has created, and there's no styles file in there. And that's because in my layout, I used this kind of relative path. So it's going to look for the CSS file next to whatever post or whatever page is currently active. So I need to use this slash, which you noticed that I've done here as well. So this means like go to the top of the URL. So go to like localhost 4000 and then look for styles.css because that's where I put it. And then the next thing I want to do is like actually use that. So I could use a class or something, but for now I'm just going to do this, something like this, width, I don't know, 500 pixels. See what that looks like. Yeah, there you go. It took a second for Jekyll to do his thing, and for some reason my command line keeps hanging. I have to keep hitting enter over here, and sometimes that happens. That's more my computer just acting up. But whatever. So here's my blog post, and again, you'll notice that if you look at my actual post, if I go back to beach, you know, the only content I specified was this part, and the image. This footer is coming from the layout. This nav is coming from the layout. And I get this debatable, but this nice directory structure, so it'll help organize my posts that way. I actually personally don't like this kind of URL. I think it kind of for what I would use it for, it's not the right thing to do. But if that's what you want to do, that's totally cool. But my point is that you can customize this. You don't have to stick with the default. So let's see, if I go to Jekyll and I go to docs, I think they have a section here, permalinks. Yeah, there you go. So basically what you can do is you can specify the link that you want to use. And I could say like up here, like permalink, I think I could do beach here, something like this. Maybe I need beach.html. I'm honestly not sure. And let's see, is Jekyll doing its thing? Where's my command line? It looks right, actually. Oops. So now let me maybe go back home and let me go to beach.html. Yeah, there you go. So this is a little friendlier, but it's going to get a little bit annoying if I have to specify the permalink everywhere. So what I can do is, first of all, I want to find like the what's it called, like the placeholder, I guess, the way to reference a part of the URL no matter what post I'm in. And I think I want this title. So what I can do is this title, maybe the HTML, maybe not. It doesn't really matter. You can play around with exactly what you want. I'm not sure if I need this HTML or not. Let's find out. That seems to work. That seems to work. So actually either one seems to work. Is that right? Let me do something real quick. Let me do this. Let me kind of restart my Jekyll server, just because I think maybe that old file was just kind of sticking around. Okay, so beach works. I'm guessing beach.html will not work. Oh, it does. All right, well, whatever. That's just Jekyll being handy. So I've specified that the permalink is whatever the title is, and I guess it's smart enough to figure out like if it's just the title or if it's title.html, then that'll work. So that's cool. So this is a little friendlier, and I could, go back to my home page and include a link there. Kind of getting ahead of myself there though. So the one thing I want to do is move this. So right now I've specified it in this individual post, but in a second I'm going to start adding some other posts, and I don't want to have this same thing copied in every file. It's going to be pointless because it's just the same information over and over again. So what I can do instead is create what's called a config file. So I can do _config.yaml, YML. Yeah. And I can move that property into that. So config.yaml is kind of for like global properties or for properties that apply to every single page or every single post. And so I'm putting it here so that I don't have to continue specifying it everywhere in every file. So I'm not sure if it picks up on the config file. I guess we'll find out. So if I refresh, it should still, nope. Maybe that, nope. All right, something broke. It could be because Jekyll breaks if you mess with its config file while it's running. Let me try just rerunning my server. I might have also messed up the syntax, maybe. Yeah, okay. I think it was because I modified the config file while I was running the server, which made Jekyll sad. So rerunning the server worked. All right, cool. So I've got beach. I've got my beach post, and let's see, if I go home, I still have this kind of boring home page. So what I could do is let me close some of these out. I could go to index.html and I could add a link manually here. I could do something like this. Beach.html, or just beach, I guess it was. Beach. And maybe I'll kind of prepare myself and say like, here are my blog posts, whatever. Maybe I'll make this like a UL or LI. Yeah, UL. So an unordered list just for bullet points instead of numbers. Yeah, whatever. LI. LI. So right now I've just got my one post, but if I refresh this, then here my blog post. Right now I can just go to beach, can go back home, can go to contact, and you can kind of see that it's starting to get fleshed out a little bit. And so I might next add another post. Let's say if I go here, go back to my posts, maybe I'll create one that's about, what was my other picture? I think it was hiking. Let's see. So maybe I'll say this was the next day. Hike, and I'll edit this file. And again, the nice thing is that I don't have to edit like a whole bunch of shared stuff. So I can edit only what has changed. So title. Today I went, I'm not super creative, but on a hike, whatever. You can imagine that you're writing this yourself and you can fill it out with whatever you want. I think this is my image. I'm kind of just going off some images I saved earlier. So what did I call it? Yeah, hike. So let's see. So that works. And let me refresh this. Let me check that URL works. Maybe I'll just go to hike itself. Yeah, there you go. So there's my second blog post. And you'll maybe realize that if I wanted to maintain this list on the home page, I would need to go after I posted or after I created my hike post. I would need to remember to go back to index.html, and I would need to add it here. And the bigger your site gets, the more annoying that is. You can maybe imagine that this list shows up in a couple different places, or there's a few different things you need to change, blah blah blah. And it's just going to be kind of annoying. So instead, what you can use is another Jekyll feature called, I don't even know what it's called much, but it's a fact that you can write liquid that iterates over posts. So I can steal some code from the official docs, and here it is. Here's the code I want. So this is kind of the payoff of using Jekyll and using posts is instead of maintaining this list myself, I can write liquid, which is this templating language that lets me use the kind of flow statements that you're used to, like for loops and if statements and things like that, and variables and all that good stuff, like to output your HTML. So, it's debatable whether I'm formatting this correctly, but it doesn't really matter. So now what I can do is use this liquid syntax to say post.url, I think. Actually, it's right behind me. I can just look at it, post.url and post.title. Yeah. And if I save this, so notice I have not said anything about the beach post. I've not said anything about the hiking post. I've just said, hey, Jekyll, give me every post, create this bit of HTML based on each post, and then output that as HTML, throw it into the default layout, and output that as the output HTML that the server actually serves. So if I refresh this, you'll see that I made a syntax error because I'm a fool. Why is that? Oh, I forgot the sort of liquid part of it. So I need these curly braces. So before, without those, it was just like straight HTML, and so that's why you're seeing post.title here. But if I add the liquid curly braces, then Jekyll steps in and says, I'm going to take the title from the post and insert it here. So now if I refresh, there we go. I've got hike and I've got beach here. So those links should work. And if I go home, works, contact works, all works. And the title up here works as well. Cool. That's kind of the fundamentals of Jekyll right there. So just to maybe drive the point home, what I'll do is I'll create a third post, and so maybe I come in the next day and I create an HTML file, and I'm going to maybe do this one from scratch just to demonstrate what that would look like. So I'll do like 2021-03, and what's the next day, like 03, and I'll call this one lake, I think was the other image that I prepared, and I'll call this HTML. and I'll get yelled at by Windows because I'm changing the extension, but that's okay, Windows, you can calm down. So I'll build this one from scratch. I'll say, here's my front matter. What do I need? I need my title. I actually don't even think I need a title because I think Jekyll's smart enough to get it from the file name, but whatever. And I need my layout, of course. My layout is default, and then in here I want my HTML, which is like a title, lake, some content. Today I went to the lake, whatever. Again, you can imagine that these are posts that are interesting to you. Maybe these are, whatever, recipes or tutorials or really anything. Images, lake.jpg. And if I've done everything correctly, what should happen is Jekyll will automatically add my lake post to my front page, my home page here. So if I refresh, there's lake now. And if I click that, you'll see that I have this sort of full HTML page, even though all I needed to do to write the post was to specify my content, which is only like 3 HTML tags in this case, but even if it was more complicated, the concepts would be the same. Yeah, that's the fundamental flow of it. All right, a couple other things I want to talk about. How am I doing on time? We're like 45 minutes or so. Whatever. If you're still with me, then thanks for hanging out. I'm going to keep going. What do I want to talk about? Oh yeah. So if you remember from a couple tutorials ago, if you followed these in order, or if not, that's cool too. We can check them out together. If I go to my HTML tutorials and I go back to GitHub profile README, this is where we first kind of learned about Markdown. And Markdown is a language that lets you specify content in kind of a simplified format, which is converted into HTML. So for example, you can specify bold with some stars. You can specify like titles with a whatever this thing's called, pound symbol. And the long story short is that Jekyll also supports Markdown. And so what I can do is, maybe just let's close out everything for a second just to start from scratch a little bit. Maybe I should have planned this and I should have done the lake in Markdown to start with, but whatever. Let me maybe change my beach file to a Markdown file first. Get yelled at by Windows because it doesn't trust me. And then what I want to do is pretend that I was specifying this in Markdown the entire time. So instead of HTML, what I'm going to do is specify all of this in Markdown, which means I can delete some of these HTML tags and I can use the syntax of Markdown. So if I save this, then you'll see that it's a little easier to write a post in Markdown than it would be to write it in HTML, because I don't have to like deal with HTML tags and all that rigmarole. I can write in Markdown, which is a little bit easier, I think. So if I go back to my blog, I can go back to beach. I should see that nothing has changed because the output is the same. Let me just test that everything's connected. Beautiful. Check on Jekyll, make sure it's having a good day. Seems to be having a fine day. Refresh. Yeah, there you go. So the content that's reflected in the output is indeed based on the Markdown. And I could go through and convert all 3 of my files, but whatever, you get it. The concepts are similar, but now next time I create a file, I can start by creating it in Markdown, and that's a little easier. Another kind of fun one that I kind of want to play with is, yeah, whatever, let's just do it. It's a Saturday afternoon, let's have fun with it. I want to do something like specify like an image file in each post and then use that on my homepage. So right now these links are kind of boring, and I want to spice them up a little bit. So let's say image equals images beach.jpg, and I want to change my other files to specify an image property. This isn't like a magic thing. This is just something I'm adding because you're allowed to add whatever you want up here, any variables that you want to use. And which one did I miss? Was it this one? Yeah. So now every post, all three of my posts, know about their image, as long as I use the right syntax. Image, yeah. So now I can kind of use that in my layout. So if I go to my layout and I go to, actually no, sorry, I want to use that in my homepage, right, not my layout. In my homepage where I've created the links, so here. And so what I want to do is a few different things I could do, but maybe instead of li and ul, maybe I don't do that. Maybe what I do is something like a div, maybe, I don't know, we'll see. I haven't practiced this at all, if you can't tell. Class equals, I don't know, call it like thumbnail, something like this. And we'll say /div, and for now, let me just see what this looks like. It's always good to kind of develop iteratively. I kind of expect to see each of these on their own line without the dots. Let's see. Yeah, all right, cool. What I might also do is mess with my CSS a bit. So if I go to my CSS, maybe I'll say .thumbnail. So this is the div. Maybe I'll say border, I don't know, thin solid black. Is that the order? I never remember. Yeah, we'll find out. Kind of gross, but whatever. We'll play with it. Good enough. And maybe what I'll do is say .thumbnail image, and here I'll give it a width of, I don't know, 200 pixels. And then back in my home page, I'll say, maybe I'll put it here. So image source equals, and I'll put something in there. And here's where the kind of the magic happens. I'm going to use liquid here, and I'm going to say post.image. So this post.image is what I'm getting from each individual post. I'm saying take this property and insert it into the content here, and then insert all of the content into the default layout. Let's see what this looks like. Probably horrible. It's only slightly horrible. It's not terrible. It needs some styling. Needs some love. So maybe I might make these like headings. And you'll notice that I only have to, also this dangling li there, whoops. You'll notice that I only have to change the HTML in one place for it to affect all three things, all three outputs, because it's in this kind of for loop, which is another example of how Jekyll makes my life easier. So let's refresh that. It's a little better. Maybe I'll say, I'll go back to my CSS and I'll say my thumbnail is, what is it? Display inline block. So it doesn't take up the whole width, maybe. Yeah, it's looking better already. Maybe I'll give it a margin, I don't know, 25, something like that. Yeah, man, maybe. Maybe I'll give my image a margin as well. It's fine, you know. I don't love it. I don't hate it, but it's just an example of kind of fleshing out my fake blog here. So I went from this relatively simple static HTML file to this more dynamic blog. I'm quite annoyed by the text, so I'm going to change that. Thumbnail h. Maybe I'll just say thumbnail. Can I do text align here? Text align center, maybe. Yeah, good enough. you can think of other things that you could do. Maybe you specify a little description here. Maybe you add the date, and all of these things are doable using the kind of concepts and the flow that I've already outlined. You would possibly add a property up here. Some of the properties are already, like, by default specified in the name of the file. So actually the date is already available to you. You don't have to specify it here. And then I'd use that in Liquid in the index file. But for my purposes, I think this is probably good enough. Let me see. So let me kind of cheat a little bit. Let me kind of remind myself of if there's anything that I'm forgetting. So we talked about front matter. We talked about all that stuff. We talked about markdown. Yeah, okay, good enough. So the last thing I want to talk about, there's one thing I should talk about. So right now, everything that we've done so far is on localhost, which is nice because, it let me play around with the stylings, and I could have like a really ugly homepage for a while as I worked on it, and no one else could see that because it was only on my local computer. But if I wanted to show it to other people, so have I lost my URL? I have. So my live URL is still my old content because I have not pushed it to GitHub, but I know we can do that. So let's see. So you might notice that there's a ton of changes here. So yeah, one thing I want to do is go back to my directory, and you'll notice that Jekyll creates some of these like extra files and directories. So I want to add those to gitignore. Delete this, get yelled at by Windows, yes. And edit this to include those directories, Jekyll cache and _site. So go back to GitHub. Yeah, it's a little cleaner. So now these are all the files that I've actually added that I was actually using, and we can look through these, blah blah blah. But this is what I would expect. Index.html is, here's what we changed, here's what it was before, and here's the new version. So let me just create like a commit. It's really hard to come up with like these commit messages while I'm on mic. Jekyll blog, whatever, it doesn't matter. Commit. And I'm going to push this to GitHub. And the magic is that behind the scenes, GitHub Pages automatically uses Jekyll. So I don't have to do anything special. I just upload my changes. And similar to how I ran Jekyll serve locally, GitHub Pages will do that automatically behind the scenes. It's going to take a few minutes. So, actually, holy crap. That was very fast. I did not expect that at all. It's already up. That's crazy. So here is my sort of live site. So I can click around and I can send these URLs out. I can share them on Twitter or TikTok or whatever the kids are using these days. And here's my blog, or here's my live site. And if I wanted to make an update or make a new post, what I would do is I would go here, create a new post, probably use Markdown instead of HTML, and I would only have to add that one file, and everything else would update automatically. This homepage would update automatically. Pushing it to GitHub would update the live site automatically, and it's just super convenient without needing to juggle a bunch of raw HTML. Yeah, cool. That's about everything. So the one last thing I wanted to mention is sort of how this all works behind the scenes. Because in my experience anyway, a lot of folks who are new to Jekyll, they kind of treat it as magic, and in some ways it is, but in other ways it's not. It's still HTML. It's still the end result of Jekyll is still HTML. And by that I mean, if I go back to my my top level directory, and let me maybe do a couple things. Let me kill my server real quick. Let me do Jekyll clean. Jekyll clean is a sort of, it's just a command that puts everything back to its original state, like before the server was run. And so it kind of deletes some of those magic files that Jekyll had added. And so now everything in here is a file that I added, except for this git thing, which is something that git added. But you know, here's everything I added. So I added this layouts, I added posts, I added images, blah, blah, blah. These are all my files. And, you know, as a reminder, if I go into these posts, you know, I've got this like naming convention with the year and the month and the day and the title and all that stuff. And the content of these is, well, in this case, it's markdown. And, you know, that's how it all fits together. So now if I run, so I'm going to maybe try to do it this way. So I've got this over here and I've got this over here. Now I'm going to run Jekyll serve. I'm going to hit enter and sort of watch over here what happens. So now my server's running, and you might notice specifically two things. One is this Jekyll cache, which we don't care about at all. That's some internal Jekyll stuff that it uses. What we care about is this _ site directory, which is not something I created. This is something that Jekyll itself created. And if I go in here, here are the files that are being served by the server. And so, for example, let's see, do I have one of these open? No, I closed them all. Let me go back to, I don't know, my posts. Let's go to beach.md. And if I open that in JEdit, you know, the content is markdown. I've got some front matter up here that specifies the default layout, and it's, you know, inside of this post directory, and its file name is the date and then the title, and it's markdown. So if I go back to this site, you'll see, I already forgot which one I was looking at, beach. Here's beach, and it's an HTML file, and it's in the top level directory. And that's because of the permalink that we specified. We said that the permalink is just the title. We said forget about that date stuff, just put it right in the top. And so that's what Jekyll does. It puts it right in the top. And if I open this up in JEdit, you'll see that the output is a full HTML file. So it's a full HTML file, including the head tag, including the title, which is here. And you might notice that like the content here is not indented correctly, and I'm guessing that's because, why is that? Let's see. So if I go here, if I go to here, and I go here, so I have indented it here. So actually, it's kind of funny. Oh, too many files. So I've got, yeah, okay. So actually, it's not indented because, oh, right. Because it's not indented in the original file. So if I go here, I don't have indentation here. So it's real dumb. It's just taking the content that's here, which is not indented, and it's putting it into the layout file. And so the end result is, here's the content sort of inserted into the layout without much. Oh, here it is. So it's funny. Okay, so here's the indent in the layout, right? I've said in my original layout, and this is kind of getting like pedantic and into the weeds, but I kind of think this stuff is interesting. So I've said, sure, indent my content. Why not? Put my content here. But the funny thing is that my content is multiple lines. And so the first line is beach. And if I go to the output file, you'll see that the beach is indented, but then the rest of it's not. And that makes perfect sense because, you know, these lines are not indented. That's funny. Anyway, that's just a kind of a silly way to show you how the output works. So Jekyll takes the input files that I created, and it, first of all, it converts the markdown into HTML, and then it takes that HTML and it inserts it into whatever layout you have specified up here. And it outputs that as a file. in the underscore site directory. And so a lot of folks will say something like, hey, my images are too big in Jekyll. And I don't want to say it's not a good question, but it's not the question that they should actually be asking, because Jekyll doesn't care about your images. It's just outputting HTML. And so if you're saying, remember earlier when my image was too big, if I didn't quite understand how it all fit together, I might be tempted to go to Stack Overflow and say, hey, when I run Jekyll, my images are too big. When really what I should be asking is, I have an HTML image tag and the image is too big. How do I resize it? And the answer is CSS, and we saw some of that. So I wanted to explain kind of the output here to, demystify the process a little bit. So if you are working with Jekyll and you have a question, one of the best things you can do is look at these output files, or another way to do that is to look at the source in your browser. So you can either do, view source, or you can do like inspect element, because the output is all HTML. It's not like magic Jekyll. It's a little bit magic, but the output is HTML, which you can ask kind of more specific questions about HTML than you can about Jekyll. All right, that's my spiel on Jekyll not being, well, it's kind of magic, but it's not so magical that you can't understand it. I think, especially if you recognize that the output is pure HTML. So Jekyll's not running a magic server. It's running the file server, I think, or a web server that serves these files. But Jekyll itself is not like running your liquid like on the fly. It's running it one time at the very beginning, outputting these files, and then serving these files directly. So maybe one of the last things I want to mention is I've been assuming that you're using GitHub Pages, and that kind of works magically because Jekyll is used by GitHub Pages automatically. But you're not forced to use GitHub Pages. You can use anything you want. You would just upload these files, right? So upload those to your favorite web host. Okay. I know I'm going way over time, and I know my neighbors are honking at me. It's very annoying. I should not do these with the window open, but it's so nice out. Anyway, the last thing I want to mention is if you want an example of kind of a real life website that is built using Jekyll, then guess what? I have just the website for you. It's called happycoding.io. This is my website where I post all of my tutorials and examples and stuff, and you can come here and read the tutorial that you just watched, but all of this is done using Jekyll. So I have a blog part of this, but like for example, all of these tutorials are themselves posts, exactly like how beach was a post and hike was a post and lake was a post. So for example, let me go to Jekyll here. So here's the written version of the tutorial that you just watched. And I think I have a link down here somewhere. Yeah, here-ish. So here is the markdown. Let me maybe view this in raw mode. Here's the markdown for the post that is output as this HTML. So you might recognize some of this. Like here's your front matter, which specifies a layout and a title and a thumbnail, exactly how we specified the image. And I've got some of this other stuff, but the idea is very similar. I specify my front matter with some properties. I specify my content, and I use Markdown. So as I write a tutorial, I use Markdown. This HTML is just like the HTML that I've posted like as code in here. So don't get that twisted. But for the most part, I write in Markdown because it's just a little easier than if I had to deal with a bunch of HTML tags every time I wanted to write a tutorial. And the end result is this, pretty complete website that's, real and out there in the world. So I don't know, things like like this, you know, this is all Jekyll stuff. It's all stuff I build using Jekyll. So I don't know. I don't know. Let's see. Maybe let's look at the layouts, for example. Layouts. So we just looked at a tutorial post. So another thing I haven't mentioned is you can actually kind of stack layouts, which lets you put like some content in some pages, but not all. So for example, every tutorial has this kind of section down at the bottom that says Happy Coding is a community of blah, 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 blah. So if I go back, I keep going back and forth, but if I go back to Jekyll, if I scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see here. So you'll see this content that I've specified, and this content's not on every single page, it's just on tutorials, and so that's why I've added it here. But it's the idea is the same. I say, hey, layout, take the content from whatever page this is in and throw it in this other layout. So this default layout is here, and this is where I specify all of my, my nav and stuff. And there's other stuff you can do, like here's some liquid stuff. There's other features that you can use, which I'll just kind of mention very briefly. I've talked about kind of the concepts that are kind of fundamental to Jekyll, but there are some other things that come in handy, like let's see, includes is one. Includes is a really handy one that lets you kind of splice up your content a little bit, and this comes in handy. So for example, each of these thumbnails is an include. So actually here I can just show you because I wrote this down as part of the written version of it. So if I go here, here's an include that does some magic to build a tutorial, like a thumbnail. So I don't have to do this in a bunch of different places. I just do it in one place. And if I want to change, I don't know, the size of this image, well, first of all, that would be CSS, but I don't know, if I wanted to add like the date here, I would do it in one place instead of trying to track down everywhere that I use the thumbnail. Anyway, that's kind of some examples of what you can do with Jekyll in the real world. Let me think about this. So maybe one more thing I'll say is I do have this site.json is I guess it's a file. The output is a file. And I use this to build things like, I don't know, happycoding.io/tags, I think. So I use this file to write JavaScript to build pages like this one. And the way I build this file, which this file contains like metadata about every single post on the web page, and it would be really annoying to build this manually or to remember to update this every single time. So guess what? I use Jekyll for that as well. So if I go up here and I go to API and I go to site.json, I don't know why GitHub wants to format it in red like that, but ignore that. Maybe let me go to raw. Here's the Jekyll code that outputs this content. And so I don't know, the lesson here is that you're not limited to HTML. Here I am outputting JSON, and that unlocks a few interesting things that you can do. But with what you learned so far, I think you can go pretty far. So let's forget about this example for a second. But if I go back to here, we started with the very simple, just static HTML hello world type content and built out kind of a full blog, or I used a blog, but you can use these concepts for any kind of page that you want to build. And you can use things like posts to iterate over your content without having to remember to update your homepage. So for example, if I added a post, it would show up here automatically without me doing anything. You can use layouts to contain the shared content. So if I wanted to change the nav bar on every single page, I would change that in one place. I would change that in my layout, and that is a little easier to deal with than than if I had full HTML files in here, because I can just update it in here, one place. And like I said, that's easier than if I had to remember like all 5 of my files at this point. You know, it's already getting pretty unmanageable, and I only have a few files here. So that's where Jekyll comes into handy. All right, I think that's where I'm going to end it. This already went way too long, but I'll say that I love Jekyll. I think Jekyll is one of the most, you know, handy tools, and it has helped me build happycoding.io in ways that I am constantly surprised by. If I think about how I would have built this without Jekyll, it's, you know, maybe an interesting problem, but there's so many rabbit holes that I would have had to go down myself that Jekyll kind of handles for me, and I truly love it. I think it's a beautiful piece of technology. So yeah, check it out, and, you know, build your own web page, build your own blog, build your own, you know, whatever you want, your recipes, your favorite lizards, I don't know, just get creative. And as always, if you come up with something based on either any of the code that I'm including as part of the tutorial, or, you know, just in your own messing around, don't hesitate to either leave a comment on this video or come over here to the Happy Coding forum and come say hi. I would absolutely love to hear from anybody who's doing this kind of stuff. But I think that's where I'm going to leave it. So I'm going to say, as always, thanks for watching, and have a lovely day, and happy coding.